How to beat advanced chess players. In this video, we are going to learn just that, so stick around. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this game I played recently. It's against a 1900-ish player, and this is coming out of the Caro-Kann opening. So I have a video actually on how to play this specific variation of the Caro-Kann after the knight takes an f6. Usually we have e takes, but sometimes players play g6. I have a whole video on this. I'm going to link it at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I go over in detail how to play this opening. And honestly, you can probably win close to 100% of your games after this. This is called the Bronstein-Larsen variation. Just from watching this video, it's that good. So please make sure you check that out. And if you like these videos, now is a good time to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content coming out. Anyway, back to the game. So here I play c3. Again, I go over this whole opening in the other video. And now the whole point of c3 is I don't want to play the knight out right away because I don't want to get pinned. So I make a waiting move. And now the bishop comes to f5. And when I take the knight out, you'll see that because black opened up their g file, the king's not going to go kingside. The king's going to go queenside where it's safe. Now also, where do you think the rook's going to go? Either the rook's going to go to the g file or the rook's going to stay behind this pawn and the pawn's going to push up the board. So there's a common rule here, basic rule. If you're going to play against the open g file, there's a certain setup you want to have to defend the open g, to blunt the open g file. And that is a fianchetto position. So I go to fianchetto my bishop. Now, why does this play against the open g file, the open rook? I'm going to show you why. Because now, if you see, just by the nature of the fianchetto position, if the rook were to attack the g-pawn, now it's protected by two pawns, not to mention there's a bishop behind it. So it's very, very powerful. It blunts the g-file attack. Now, the only thing we have to worry about now is the h-pawn coming down. Since we blunted the g-file, we don't want our opponent to open the h-file and get a strong attack on our king. So for that reason, that's why I use the knight to blockade the h-pawn. So that's the knight's job. And again, not to beat the dead horse, but I have a whole video on this. I'll link it at the end of the video. Make sure you check it out because it's super easy to play against this opening. I haven't lost the game since I've played, I learned how to play this opening against the Bronstein variation. But my knight here has a job to do. My knight's job is to blockade this pawn. That's the only thing my knight wants to do here. My knight does not want to get into the game. It doesn't want to develop. It just wants to stay here. That's its job. So if we're blunting the g file and we're stopping the h pawn from opening up our king position, we don't really have too much to worry about. And that's what we want to do in chess. That's the first thing. So the first thing is we want to understand the first step is the opening. So you have to play the opening well to beat advanced players. So I understand this opening. That's number one. So make sure you know your openings, at least the basics of it, and what you want to do. Number two, we want to establish what type of position we have. So I know that there was an open g file, so I want to fianchetto my pawns to blunt that. Also, since there's an open g file, I know that the rook is probably going to attack here, which means the king is not going to come this way. It would be too weak. The king would go to the queen side. So what type of position would that form? What type of game if the king goes queen side and I'm on the king side? Kings of opposite side castling. So you have to understand what type of position is coming out of the game and what's the general strategy against it. Now, the general strategy against kings of opposite side castling is you want to push the pawns because it doesn't hurt. If I'm pushing pawns to attack the king, but my king's not over there, I'm not weakening anything. If I push these pawns, I weaken my own king. That's why if the kings are on the same side of the board, we don't do that. But when the kings are on opposite sides of the boards, it doesn't hurt to, you don't lose anything. You have to push the pawns. That's the general strategy. So since I know the king's going to go over there anyway, now he could go this way, but if he does, that would be a very bad strategy for him. He would get checkmated probably pretty quickly. So if he goes that way, fine. If he plays the best way, though, with the way he should play, I'm going to have a pawn storm waiting for him. So I start pushing before he even gets there. So now that he's also trying to weaken my defense. So I have a Fee and Shadow bishop. This is covering the light squares, so it's good defensively. It's also a very powerful offensive piece because it's taking over the biggest diagonal on the board, and it's going to soften up the position where the king is going. For that reason, black, rightfully so, wants to trade these bishops down. Okay, notice how I don't invite the queen into the game. I just go ahead with my plan and continue to push the pawns. Now black trades, gets rid of the bishop. That's good. And he brings his knight to a great square on c4, excuse me. And this knight is the best part of his game. Okay, so now I go ahead and start to bust open the position. Now here comes the third step, okay? Basically, I know his king's going over here. I determine that, and I know the strategy is to push the pawns. But now I go for the pawn break against this pawn because I'm going to open the position, right? So if he lets me, which he does here, I open the position. So now I have open files to my opponent's king, or my opponent's king is going to be. So now I can put my rook on the b file and attack the king. So I have a semi-open file technically because black has a pawn here. If black did not have a pawn here, I would have a completely open file. But a semi-open file is good enough. So that's the third step. I'm preparing my attack. Now, the fourth step is developing all my pieces. You always want all your pieces developed. So unless there's a specific threat, which black does not have here, I just go ahead and develop, right? So now black's developing too, and I develop my last piece, my rook. My bishop's going to come out soon too. So black castles queenside. I push the pawn, right? I know what the strategy is, so I continue to push the pawn. And now, again, if black takes with the queen, that's going to be pretty embarrassing, right? You can't blunder. If black takes with the pawn, that's a positional blunder because now he's completely opening up the b file. So black has to push here, and then I finish development. So the fourth step is make sure you develop all your pieces if you can in chess. Again, you're developing when there's no specific threats. So tactics supersede strategy. You have to make sure that none of your pieces are hanging, or you don't have the option or the opportunity to take a piece yourself. If nothing's going on, always develop, improve your position. It's very simple. Okay, now my opponent is starting to put the rooks on the g file like he said he would. So this is advanced chess. And why am I using a game against a 1900 chess player when most of you are probably not at that rating level? No offense or anything. It's just most human beings are not 1900 in chess. If you're above 1800 in chess, you're probably better than 99% or more of the world's population in the game of chess. You're that good at chess. It's a very advanced level of chess. However, they're still making tons of mistakes. And the thing is, you don't have to, it's not hard to capitalize on them. Again, that's why I'm just breaking down simple stuff I'm doing in this game. I'm not doing anything brilliant in this game at all. Okay, I just put my rook on the B file, the open B file, preparing possibly maybe sacrifices or whatever. Whatever happens in the position, I'm going to be ready because my pieces are going to be in the best possible position to be ready, right? You want to put your pieces in the best possible position so when the game opens up, they're ready to be deployed. You don't have to wish they were in a certain spot. You already have everything where you need it. Okay, so now black starts attacking. And here is the last and final step. So black's starting to attack. Maybe he'll double, or maybe he wants to get rid of this blockaded knight, this knight that's blockading this pawn. So if I make a random move, black might take my knight, so an exchange sacrifice, but then he gets a completely open G file, and the queen's coming in, and I really don't want to play this game. This is not very fun at all. Black would be winning here. If I play perfect defense, I might be able to hang in there, but still, I don't want to play a position like that. So what do you do when your opponent's attacking you, right? So I think most players, because I teach chess and I went over this with a lot of my students, and I watch a lot of games at beginner level and intermediate level chess. It seems like players take it for granted that when they're attacking their opponent, right, on a position like this where the kings are on opposite sides of the board or not, that they have to take an attack themselves. So I'm attacking you, so you're going to attack me, and it's double-edged, and that's how it's going to be. And sometimes if you absolutely can't control it, fine. But a lot of times in chess, you can have your cake and eat it too. And good chess players, that's exactly what they do. They have their cake and they eat it too. Because what's good about having a cake if you can't eat it, right? Of course, duh. So I can have all the attack I want and at the same time completely shut down his attack if I just know basic principles of chess and deploy them. So this is the fifth step I deployed in this game to win a game against a 1900 player. Again, nothing supernatural, nothing brilliant. I just realized what he wants to do. And I realized that in general, the general principle is I want to close the position where he's attacking. I want to open the position where I'm attacking. So I want to open files. I want my open rooks here. I want to try to open up the pawns. Notice how he interlocked the pawns. He closed the position. That was good. But I still have an open rook. He wants to open the position on the side he's attacking, and I want to close it. So what does a closed position look like? It looks like pawns interlock with each other. If I can basically interlock the pawns, I close the position where he's attacking, and I completely defend it. So how do I do that here? So first, I want to avoid the exchange sacrifice. So I put my knight, after this move, I put my knight on g2. Now, I saw what he was going to do. He saw, okay, I'm going to go open up the position. Now, again, it's a big mistake if I don't see this, don't realize what's going on. Again, black would not push here. That would be a strategic error. He wants to open where he's attacking. So he opens the lane of attack where he's attacking, the h-file. And with the bishop heading towards my king, the rook, the queen coming out over here, this is pretty disastrous. This is actually completely losing for white just because he opened up the h-file. So if we go back, after I move my knight to g2 and black plays h4, how do we close this position? How do we get these pawns interlocked? I use this first by using the rook's over aggression against my opponent. I simply attack the rook. And now my opponent does not have time to take because he opens the file, but at the cost of a whole rook, which is too much. So he has to move his rook away. And when he moves his rook away, now I simply... So I use h3 as a step ladder, pretty much, a stepping stool to get to g4. Now when I get to g4, it's protected by here. The pawns are interlocked, so it's closed. Now I saw his next move. Again, he's a strong player, so what did he try to do? He's going to try to open up the king side of the board again. And how is he going to try to open up the king side? Of course, he's going to attack this pawn. Now, this is the point pawn, I call it. It's the pawn furthest up the board on the king side. So he's going to play f5, which is what he did, and try to open up the board. Now, if I take, that's a mistake because I'm opening up the whole game. So that's not good. In fact, that would be checkmate on the spot if I take. That's checkmate. So what do I want to do? I want to continue to close the position. Now, I can't really push here, even though my bishop's protecting, because he can remove the defender, and then only my queen's defending, and then he could do stuff like this. That's not good. We don't want to play like that. So my idea was, and this is another idea here, is when our opponents are attacking on the flank, if we can, we want to counterattack in the center. Now, this pawn is being supported by this pawn. So I played d5, attack the queen, and I'm trying to get to undermine the pawn. Now, the queen, I guess, can move away if it wanted to, but I would just kind of start to chip away at the pawn center, and here I actually could take the knight. So the queen's defending the knight, and the queen for that reason can't move away. So if he took with the queen here, I would just simply take, and after he takes back, now I would open up the game because now it doesn't matter. If I open up the g-file and there's no queens on the board, my opponent is not going to get a mating attack. With the queens off the board, the game of chess pretty much changes. It doesn't become a very dynamic, aggressive game. I don't have to worry too much about king side attacks or anything. If I just scoot my king over to f1, I'm perfectly safe. And if he ever doubles up, I can just move my knight, and that's fine. So that's what I would do if he took with the queen. My opponent took with the pawn, which undermines this pawn. Now, of course, I didn't take like this because with the queens on the board, this is disaster. And, all he has to do is just simply like, he has a lot of moves here. He can take here and then push, check. I'm getting checkmated. This is not good. Again, I want to keep this position closed. So I simply take with the queen. And now this position's interlocked on the king side, which means it's closed, which means I'm defending. And there's no way he can continue to try to open this up. So I completely shut down his attack. Now all I have to do is go forward with my attack. Now in this position, he brought the knight back here, and which was unfortunate because the knight's being attacked once and defended once. If I move my bishop away, then just anywhere, the rook hits the knight, so it's attacked twice. Now you need an equal number of defenders as you do attackers in order to adequately defend a piece. So I figured if I move my bishop out of the way and naturally attack it a second time, what if I move my bishop out of the way and attack also with my bishop? So now I'm attacking with the rook just by moving my bishop out of the way, but also attacking with my bishop, and my queen's attacking. So now I have 3 attackers to 1 defender, and he can't move the knight out of the way because the rook is behind it. So I'm pinning the knight at the same time. So in this position, after I adequately defended, I was able to counterattack immediately, and my opponent, his last-ditch effort was to play this, but it doesn't adequately defend because I have 1, 2, 3 attackers. He has 2. So after this position, my opponent resigns. Well, hopefully you found that video helpful. If you did, check out this video I was talking about before. It shows you exactly how to play against the Caro-Kann Bronstein Larsen variation. Now anyway, get out of here, go play some chess.